What's going on, Badge? To the PPC Den podcast, your home for all things Amazon advertising related. We're almost 200 episodes in. Thank you so much for listening and making us the world's longest running podcast on Amazon PPC. Today on the show, I am super stoked to have Chad Rubin join us. If you've never heard of Chad, you may be living under a rock. Chad, I'm sure you've heard of The Prosper Show. He was let me get it right. He was a founding board member of The Prosper Show way back in 2015. He's been talking about e-commerce and selling on Amazon and has been selling on Amazon since before it was cool, way back in the almost like a decade ago. He was the co-founder of Seller's Choice. He started a company called Skubana, which was helping people do inventory management for when you sell on Amazon and off of Amazon. He's got an e-commerce brand called Think Crucial. He's an advisor for PickFu, and he just started a new company called Prophecy. And today on the show, we're going to talk about pricing optimization, which, believe it or not, is a topic that we've never touched on in depth here on the pod, but it sounds awesome. And price optimization is something that we should all add to our tool belts. I know it's definitely something I'm going to be taking back to the PPC managers here at AdBadger, digging in and talking about how we can incorporate a little bit of this into our workflow. So listen in if you wanted to hear sort of the most time efficient way to change things like ACoS, change things like conversion rate, BSR, because it only takes 2 seconds to change the price. However, it could be super impactful, make your conversion rate go up or make it go down. And we're going to talk about situations that are worth talking about here. So without further ado, welcome Chad Rubin to the show. Chad, I am stoked to have you on the show today. I feel like pound for pound, your experience on Amazon is unreal. Everything from The Prosper Show to Skubana to now doing price optimization, you've really gone deep into the Amazon ecosystem. And I was curious, like, what did you do first? And did you anticipate going this deep into Amazon?
So I was covering stocks on Wall Street and I was covering internet stocks. So my parents had a vacuum store. I started helping them out. I started telling them that they should sell on Amazon. Amazon had just created the marketplace. And then finally I got laid off from my job on Wall Street. This is Friday the 13th in 2009. And I already started my parents' reselling business, and I knew that the writing was on the wall around resellers. And so I pivoted and changed the strategy to going direct to consumer. So I just took what I knew about the internet and about Amazon and then started applying that to real life in the marketplace and then started building from there. And I love e-commerce. I love building. I love solving hard problems. And so that's really where I've centered most of my time and attention.
For sure. I think I was super lucky to have gotten involved in Amazon in 2010. So sort of early. I was just lucky enough to have a Google Ads client who was like, hey, we also want to sell on Amazon. And at the time they were having great success on Amazon. And I would mention that to other people at the time, other Google Ads clients. I was like, hey, would you want to sell on Amazon? They're like, no. And it's so crazy to see how it's evolved so far. So yeah, my hats off to everyone who started playing around in the Amazon ecosystem as early as possible.
And sure enough, just so you know, James Thompson, who's really the founder of Prosper Show, invited me to participate. He was my account manager. Wow. When you had account managers that were centered in Seattle, right, that actually cared. And so we stayed in touch when he left Amazon. And so I started solving Skubana challenges of multi-channel inventory management, order management, and profitability. And I said, hey, James, you want to invest? He was like, hell yeah. And he's like, do you want to do this Prosper Show thing? And I was like, hell yeah. And boom.
Yeah, it's fun to go deeper into the thing that you're already pretty in on and finding other ways to help. So your most recent venture is a company called Prophecy, which I find Lighten the incense, right on.
Yeah, setting the mood a little bit.
Do you know the name of that scent? Like they always have fun names, like Emerald Forest or something like that.
This is one that my wife hates, and it's Nag Champa. You might hear her saying, Chad, turn off that incense.
Yeah.
But
Also, we're keeping our voices relatively low. I'm joining you in keeping our voices low because we have a little one sleeping in like the next room over.
Hashtag working from home.
Yes, that's right. So your latest sort of extension into the Amazon world is a company called Prophecy. And, we were talking before we hit the record button. We are like 190 episodes in on this podcast. And, we're focused on Amazon advertising. And periodically we'll have episodes about SEO or inventory management or product page optimization. But we've never done one of all in on pricing strategy. So I'm actually super stoked to talk about this. And it's right in line with your new company, Prophecy. So I guess like the first question before we even get into pricing strategy is, what was the switch point for this new venture? Why not some other element of optimization here?
Yeah, so when I took some time off from Skubana, I started making note of all the stuff that pisses me off. And one of those things that pissed me off was the fact that I was turning around my e-commerce business, which is Think Crucial, and I tried everything, and I was trying everything. And one day I was staring at a palm tree in the backyard. I just moved to Florida, and I had this epiphany moment where I was like, wait a minute, this is a massive lever that can swing a huge door. And why is nobody pulling this lever? Mm-hmm. So, I did everything. I tried optimizing my bid management with PPC. I cut fat at the business. We struggle with inflation like every other e-commerce brand right now, raw material inflation, supply chain logistics inflation. And I just had this aha moment where I was like, pricing. Why is no one changing pricing? Everyone's changing pricing. Amazon, Expedia, Uber, global hedge funds, they're all changing pricing and optimizing every penny of profit dynamically. So why can't sellers and brands on Amazon have that same superpower? Mm-hmm. So I started manually doing it, and then I started actually building software around it and automating it.
I took a price class. It was a webinar on like software pricing, like how to set right pricing for your software, or how to like boost retention and conversion and all that stuff. And like the moral of the story was like, you could do so many things. I mean, if we keep it on the Amazon example, you could do a million things. You can have video shot. You can restructure your PPC campaign. You can rethink keyword strategy. You can play with product imagery. All of that stuff is very time intensive. It's like a lot of work, but basically the lesson from like software. And I think this is true for any industry anywhere. One of the easiest, fastest ways to test for conversion rate, to optimize for lifetime value, average order value, all of that stuff is not a very robust, like post-sale drip sequence. Let's nail that. It's just like, hey, what if you like increase the price a certain percentage? What if you decrease it a certain percentage? What does that do to your conversion rate? And this has always been true, and it's cool to see this being brought up more and more in the Amazon space. We just hired a new campaign manager here at Amazon, here at AdBadger. And like, it was cool. Like he was like suggesting that to like every new customer. He's like, yes, your PPC needs all of this stuff, but have you thought about just changing your price? So let's go really broad with a really generalized question. Like, what is Amazon pricing strategy? Like let's like define this in the dictionary here.
So define an Amazon pricing strategy. So right now, Prophecy's intention, the way that we've built our algorithm and our model, is to optimize for and dynamically change price to maximize profit without sacrificing BSR. That is our intention. So I'll repeat again, maximize profit without sacrificing competitive positioning with BSR. Yeah, and so we're essentially bringing in all these different variables because it's not as simple as changing the price. Like you have all these gurus online saying, inflation is here, raise the price, but that actually is not the most optimal strategy because there's actually long-term implications that can happen on Amazon if you do change price and suddenly BSR changes, right? What happens then? Or what happens when your competition makes a change to your price change? So the reason why I started building something in data science was because there's so many data points. A human cannot process these data points. So you need to take statistical science, machine learning, behavioral science, and behavioral economics to pinpoint the optimal price. And by analyzing all these patterns of data, you're able to do it. So it's a pretty hard problem.
So going even broader, I want to go even broader than what you just mentioned.
So zoom out. You want me to
zoom out even further.
Okay.
Like, so here's how I think most people understand it. It's like, oh, my conversion rate is low. Like, that's a very common problem. Like, oh, my conversion rate is too low. My A cost is too high. Like, at the core of like all of this, it's sort of saying like your conversion rate is a result of a plethora of issues. One tiny hinge that swings a big door is the price. So by modifying this price, we get to influence. It's almost like a super high leveraged number that actually influences everything, like down to profit.
Yep. And it's easy to test and change. It's hard to measure.
Right. Why do you think what do you mean when it's for a normal company out there listening to this? Why is it so? Like, I guess the worst case scenario is they're not doing any price testing and then so if that's like level 0, and then like level 1, I've always said how difficult A/B testing is on Amazon, or testing anything in general is difficult on Amazon. But like, what would you say, like, if somebody's not doing that, like, what is like the next level up? Like, what is like first base?
Okay, first base. Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So actually, is what I was doing before I started Prophecy. So first base, to give you a base hit, you want to start with, maybe look at your 80-20 Pareto principle. So 80% of your revenue comes from 20% of SKUs. Pick one SKU, right? And make a spreadsheet. And think about all the variables that can impact when you make a change, and you want to understand, right? So you have data at your fingertips so that you're not just making guesstimates. You want to take a look at your current BSR on the current price. You may want to look at how many reviews you have, the keywords you're ranking for, and then do a reverse ASIN lookup and find other companies that are ranking on those keywords, and take a look at their price, their reviews, their BSR. So you want to start combining everything together. And then when you make a change, annotate it, and then start understanding, okay, well, how does that impact my BSR? Am I still positioned 1, 2, 3 on the keywords that I actually care about? And what is my conversion rate and what is my session rate? So you want to start putting that into a spreadsheet, a template, and tracking it, really. And it can have a massive, massive impact. And if you want, we can like walk through an example of just like what $1 and a $1 increase to do to your business.
Please.
An increase upwards or downwards. So an example would be, let's do some quick math, right? Let's just say you're selling a garlic press and it's $15. The cost of it is $1.65. Your FBA fees, let's just say the referral fee on that is $2.25, and the FBA fee is $3.96 or $4, whatever. Roughly, it's about $7 of profit. You go into Helium 10 or Jungle Scout, and you see that unit's selling 4,000 units a month, right? This is like page 1, rank 3 for a garlic press. So that's $28,000 of profit right there. $28,000, right? Now you increase the price from $14.97 to say $15.97. And assuming the cost is the same, obviously, referral fee has gone up just slightly because of Amazon's percentage in their take rate. Keeping the FBA fee, right, you're now looking at a profit of about $7.11. On a 4,000 units, that's roughly almost $32,000. Okay. So on that one SKU we changed, one SKU, we managed to increase profit by 12%. Now let's play it forward though. 12% increase of profit for one SKU, that's $3,400 a month. Multiply that by 12, it gives you your annual profit for the SKU, right? So it's close to $41,000. It's $40,800. Now, here's the kicker though. typically right now, Amazon businesses are getting a 3 or 4x multiple, right? Roughly. Maybe a year and a half ago, you're looking at 5 to 6, but let's just use 4. Let's be conservative. Essentially, you're looking at a $1 increases your enterprise value by $163,000. Now, that's assuming that the price increase was a good and optimal decision to make. And it's not always the optimal decision. So anyway, just to underline the point, right? If you just go up $1, right? This is the tiny lever swings a massive door, is that a $1 increase can actually increase your enterprise value by almost $164,000 if you do it correctly.
I want to touch on when it's bad in a second. I just took that note down. But sticking with that exact same example, just sort of understanding the principle of it all too. Generally we think of, a Ferrari dealership is going to sell fewer cars per day than the Honda dealership. Shout out Honda. Because the Honda is a cheaper product. It's more accessible to more people. The Ferrari is a much higher priced product. So I guess you could say the orders per day on a Ferrari versus a Honda is going to be lower, right? However, in the example where you increase the garlic press price a little bit, is it reasonable to what I'm sort of getting at is what is the overall trend? Obviously increasing your price improves your profit. And obviously there's going to be a break point where you've increased your price by $10 and all of a sudden nobody's buying. So your conversion rate went down. Your profit per sale is much higher, but now you're getting far fewer orders. So and then on the flip side, if you lower price, I take it your conversion rate goes up, but it's possible that you're sacrificing profit. Is that
Hold on,
general?
Can I clarify for you?
Please.
Yeah. So I think this goes to your question around when it's not okay to raise a price. So let's just say we didn't raise price by $1. Let's say actually we lowered price. Maybe that's the optimal strategy, right? So you lower price, it spurs demand. You increase velocity, and that offsets the lowered price. So your profit dollars increase because you're selling more units. That results in a lower BSR, which means it's an improvement of your competitive positioning, right? And then maybe even your organic ranking, your placement increases so that you're not renting space on Amazon any longer with PPC, but you own that space. That's a hypothetical dialogue that needs to happen in someone's head. And that's just a starting point of, okay, now we're thinking about, okay, maybe we raise price, maybe we lower price. Now we start playing on both sides of the equation. And most importantly, if you're looking down to first base, you have to know what's your absolute lowest margin you're willing to take for a product. What's your min price and what's your max price? Your floor and ceiling price have to be delineated, and having all your costs in one place help you make that decision.
Yeah. I sort of I think we've done it now, and I'm going to attempt to recap what you just sort of mentioned, just sort of the mechanism, I'm really big into inputs and outputs, actions and reactions, data, what action, what's our data, what's our action, and then what would we expect to happen. I do that a lot. Anytime I'm auditing a PPC campaign, it's I'm noticing this would be the recommended action. This would be the expected result. I'm really fascinated with that chain of events. So with pricing, confirming my understanding here with you, let's say you're selling 10,000 units. If you increase your price $1 and you could still sell 10,000 units, you just increased your profit by $10,000 minus fees and all that stuff. Even if your orders were to go down slightly, you just increase your price by 10%. So even if your orders went down per day 2%, you'd still be making 10% more profit per sale. Is that a fair understanding?
Yeah.
Or potentially your orders don't go down and they stay where they are, and then you have maximum upside.
Or maybe they go up, right?
Or maybe they go up.
You don't know unless you test. And the thing with Amazon is there's no shortage of data to test with. You're getting everything at your fingertips. It's about processing that data.
Yeah.
And so I was doing it manually initially, and I'm like, wow, this is overwhelming. Especially I have 550 SKUs. I have 1,000 listings on Amazon, all private label. So finding what the optimal decision to make based on the pattern of data is very, very hard. And that's why we built Prophecy. Right. But if you have one SKU, you can hypothetically do it. It's going to be, maybe a better thing to do with your time. But you can at least get a sense for it and get a feel for what that optimization looks like.
Right on. And just to understand the principle a little further, on the flip side, you're selling a product for $14.99, you lower it to $13.99. You would be looking at the same metrics to understand if that was a good decision. Did orders go up? Did profit go up? Where do I rank competitively?
Sessions,
so let's look at BSR, all of that stuff. Yeah,
conversion rate, even your ACoS, right? Mm-hmm. Because, advertising cost of the sale is your price.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Heavily influenced by conversion rate, average order value, all that stuff, your revenue per click. Makes total sense. So,
and I just want to say one last thing is that even the idea of just when people say raise price or lower price, you're still statically pricing. So you want to actually move into fluctuating demand with dynamic pricing. That's really the holy grail.
So what is a dynamic pricing strategy?
So it's it's not an if-then statement, right? Essentially, what AI does is it finds patterns in your data and makes decisions based on having billions of lines of data to make those decisions. So in short, typically most sellers pick a price point and it doesn't change. In fact, most sellers that we bring on Prophecy rarely, if ever, change price, which is pretty crazy. So when you can start predicting what demand, not only predicting the current price today, but predicting what the demand will be tomorrow for the optimal price, that's what a dynamic strategy is. And you can choose from having one in the supply, demand, or price elasticity curve, right? You go from having one revenue to choose from to multiple revenues to choose from at different times of the day.
Wow. So I guess another interesting question there too is why don't people do price optimization?
Well, actually, people do. If you look at Thrasio's career page, I think they have job openings for about 14 different data scientists along with pricing optimization specialists. So they're onto it, right? And they have a budget to support a massive data science team. And these people were not part of the recent layoffs that happened. So people are on it. I think that right now, e-commerce in general is going through a storming period, and we are entering into this new era. I think if you look at what's happened on Amazon, right, you had resellers, private label, then these organic brands had to learn how to be sellers to become advertisers. You're most comfortable talking about that, right? Like you've been able to capitalize on that with Ad Badger. And now you have to move from a seller to an advertiser to becoming an algorithmic brand, in my opinion. Like to be able to capitalize on all the data that's happening, this is to me directionally where things are going, right? So the future of operating on Amazon to me is AI that is anticipating, suggesting, and maximizing to help you accomplish more and process the data, kind of like a co-pilot.
For sure.
Yeah. So anyway, why are people not changing price? Like they don't have access to a data science team. They don't have the leverage. They are scared. Here's another one, right? Like, well, what happens if I raise my price too much? There's Amazon suppression of the buy box. If you're selling on multiple different channels, and let's just say you're selling on Amazon and now you're in the Target program, well, Target can become your floor price, and that leaves little room of upside because, well, Amazon doesn't want you to be higher than Target. So you have to essentially map to Target's price, and that becomes a challenge. So I think there's a lot of trepidation or reasons, like people think, oh, if I change my price, maybe my BSR will change. And it's happened so quickly, you got to keep up with it. And it's difficult to manage. And just so you know, we built suppression monitoring activity in the actual model itself for us at Prophecy. That's something that you'd want to, if you're getting on first base, you'd want to monitor suppression for sure.
And by suppression, you mean if you change the price and your BSR went in an undesirable direction, going in and correcting course, or you meant suppress, like losing the buy box?
Losing the buy box. Yeah. So Amazon might say, hey, you made and by the way, we don't make 30% incremental changes. We make small changes conservatively on the way up, and we make conservative changes on the way down. But Amazon might say, hey, you just increased price by 30%. That's not competitive. We're going to list you on the second page, the detail page on Amazon, not on the actual buy box page.
Yeah. You brought up a really interesting point that I love to talk to people about. The situation is company selling on Amazon walks into a room and says, why hasn't my profit grown 10% this quarter? And theoretically in that room, there should be an advertiser, a data scientist, a brand manager, like there should be many people. And I think it's just another hat that people need to think about, whether they're, a solopreneur, they need to dedicate some time a week to sort of thinking about the data of their company. And obviously that's where tools come into play to help us digest this kind of information for sure. So that, we do this exercise all the time when we're optimizing accounts. It's what kinds of things maybe can a human do best? What kinds of things do we need to offload to a tool? Mm-hmm. Does this ideate any new tool ideas for us? So that kind of thing of what a human does, what a brand person does, what a data scientist does, what a tool is best at, I think is a heuristic that people need to always process new activities in. And I mean, absolutely, that's the direction that anything is going. So very cool. So we covered a bunch of stuff here in terms of pricing inputs, pricing outputs, expected results. I think that's so fascinating. Some other things that are interesting too is, have you ever noticed pricing strategy differ when a product is launched versus when it's sort of in a year later?
Yeah. So we could have focused on a launch algorithm, and that's perhaps in the roadmap. But right now, in the era that we're in, with distressed e-commerce businesses, aggregators making layoffs, right, halting acquisitions, for us, everyone's moved from growth at all costs to a sustainable profit with a long-term view. And that happened really quickly. And so I wanted to focus on profit first. So yes, there is a different strategy for optimizing for BSR or optimizing for revenue than there is for profitability. And so we're just focusing on profitability, but it would be a completely different strategy for BSR.
That sort of goes into another question. I'm just sort of generally curious, one thing that generally anecdotally gets talked about is shoppers on Amazon are hyper cost sensitive. They always want the lowest price. Anecdotally, do you believe this to be true? What do you, how do you respond to that question?
So anecdotally, I would go to experience, and I would say, okay, do I always buy the lowest price? No, I don't. In fact, there's a lot of perceived value that happens maybe by looking at reviews or looking at the images or looking at, in fact, you can test this yourself, right? You can go to your Amazon account and add 50 products to your cart, and you can keep track of those price changes. So that's really why I focus on Amazon, is that Amazon has become this commodity marketplace. People don't search for Bose headphones. They search for noise-canceling headphones. 70% of searches are actually focusing on the generic term. And so anyway, long story short is Amazon is changing pricing 2.5 million times a day, every 10 minutes. And Amazon brand should be doing the same thing.
So, I guess to answer that question, is the lowest price always best? And then the answer is test it out.
The answer is it's not always the best, and there's so many other factors to consider when you're making a decision, right? In your buying decisions, right? Sometimes I won't buy the $7 garlic press. I'll buy the one that's $14.99 for a specific reason. So you don't know until you test, and so I'm not telling people to make waxing changes to their pricing. I'm saying just look at the data. Amazon's giving you all the data to make these decisions, and you can do this too.
Right on. Well, Chad, this has been a really cool look into pricing strategy, a really cool look into sort of how you guys have, focused from a data scientist perspective of how do we crunch as much data as we possibly can and to come up with a dynamic pricing strategy where you are trying to predict what is the optimal price tomorrow to optimize profit and maintain BSR. I think that's maintain BSR.
Yeah, maintain it.
Maintain it. Yeah. Awesome. I wish you so much luck at Prophecy. When do you open up to the general public?
So right now we're actually open.
Oh, you are.
The challenge, I mean, you're a SaaS founder, so you understand the challenges with scale. So I'm pretty much, I have a pretty built out data science team and engineering team, and we just can't onboard people quick enough, which is a champagne problem to have. We have about 200 people on our wait list right now. And we can probably onboard like 3 people a week. And so I'm like dripping the onboard. So technically we're live, and we're seeing, by the way, in terms of results, we're seeing typically a 10 to 12% increase in profit lift for our brands that we bring on, which is pretty amazing. I mean, I'm pretty excited about it. And I feel good. I just feel pretty overwhelmed, as I'm sure you've been in the same situation where I'm just running this scrappy, and I kind of forgot what it was like to build from scratch.
Yeah, lucky you. So for anyone listening, we'll include links in the description. It is PROFASEE, Prophecy.
Prophecy. Yeah, so play on words.
I dig it. Chad, thank you so much for coming on the PPC Den podcast. Everyone else, we'll see you here next week.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. Have a good one, Chad.